Chapter 3, Failsafe. Bryce Kensington couldn't get her voice out of his head, not the shouting, there hadn't been any, not threats either. It was the way she'd said my son is missing, like a statement of fact, like something already broken that couldn't be put back together. Frackin'. The radio lay on the console where he'd dropped it, the plastic cracked from hitting the floor. Static hissed faintly from the speaker, an open wound of sound no one wanted to touch. No one was laughing anymore. The control room felt wrong now, too quiet, too tight. 5 boys crowded into a space built for 2 professionals, surrounded by monitors that flickered between feeds or froze entirely. Emergency lighting bathed everything in dull red, painting their faces raw and hollow. There were no alarms, they shut down the whole system. Mark stood closest to the screens, his arms folded tight across his chest like he was holding himself together. Jonah paced in short, jerky lines, rubbing his hands on his jeans over and over. Kyle sat on the floor with his back against the wall, staring at nothing. Ethan was the only one still touching the equipment. "They're not coming back online," he said, his voice brittle. "The cameras, the locks, I can't even pull diagnostics." Bryce swallowed. His throat felt scraped raw. "They will, the system's just cycling." "You said that 10 minutes ago." Bryce snapped his head around. "You want to panic, because this is how people panic." Jonah let out a shaky laugh. "We're already there, man." A monitor flared suddenly to life. All 5 of them turned. The image was grainy and tilted, the camera knocked slightly off its mount. The lion enclosure filled the screen, bars heavy and thick, red emergency lights flashing rhythmically across tawny fur. The lion wasn't pacing. It stood perfectly still, staring at the gate. No one spoke. "That thing wasn't acting like that before," Mark whispered. "It's just excited." Bryce said, though the words tasted wrong. "The lights irritate him," she said. "Animals were already moving around," interrupted Ethan. "The cleaning lady, she said she could hear them moving." Bryce's jaw tightened. "Stop calling her that." Everyone stared at him. "What?" he snapped. She works here." "Yeah, and you don't," Mark said softly. "You said there was no one here." That landed harder than Bryce expected. Before he could respond, the radio crackled faintly, just a burst, less than a second. Music, loud bass, and someone is laughing on an open channel. Kyle flinched. "That's Jason." "He said he was checking the service tunnels," Jonah said. "He didn't answer his phone. I tried so many times now." Bryce felt something cold settle in his stomach. "He's fine." "You don't know that," Ethan said. "You don't." The lion moved forward. "The gate is open." It knew the gate that always kept it inside was no more. "No," Bryce breathed. "No, no, no." The camera shook violently as the lion slammed into the opening. Metal shrieked. The image lurched sideways, catching Jaren just as he turned, confusion breaking into fear. "Hey, wait, wait, wait." The lion hit him, just once. Then there was a sound, wet, heavy, and final. Blood sprayed across the concrete, streaking the camera lens red. Jared screamed, high and sharp, and then he didn't. The feed went black. Kyle made a sound that wasn't a word and dropped to his knees. Mark stumbled backward, slamming into the wall. "Oh my frackin'." Jonah gagged, his hands braced on the console. He's dead." Bryce couldn't move. It was no longer a joke. It wasn't funny anymore. It was death. We have to shut it down," Bryce said, his voice barely there. "We have to lock everything, now." He lunged for the controls, fingers slipping as he hammered at the touchscreen. "Access denied. Manual override required." "No," he whispered. "My dad said," he said. Another roar thundered through the structure, so close it rattled the glass. Then they heard, "Help!" Jason's voice echoed through the tunnels, raw and terrified. The scream cut off in the middle. Silence followed. Thick. Absolute. Jonah collapsed against the wall, sobbing openly. "That was Jason. That was Jason." Mark slid down the wall and vomited onto the floor. Kyle rocked back and forth, hands over his ears. "Make it stop. Make it stop." Bryce stood frozen, staring at the dead screens. The woman's voice came back to him then, clearer than before. "My son is missing." His chest seized. "We have to get out of here." Elsewhere in the zoo, Claire pressed Liam into the narrow shadow beside the service corridor wall, her body curved around him like armor. The emergency lights pulsed red, painting the concrete in frantic flashes. Footsteps thundered past the intersection ahead, teenagers running around blind. "Wrong way, don't go that way," Claire whispered. The lion roared a heartbeat later, close enough that the sound punched the air from her lungs. A scream followed, short, brutal, cut off too fast. Liam jerked in her arms, a broken sound tearing out of him before she could stop it. Claire clamped a hand over his mouth, pulling him tight. SHH, I've got you, she breathed, even as terror clawed up her spine. They didn't see the lion, they heard it, the scrape of claws. The heavy thud of something being dragged. Claire closed her eyes. This is what they did, she thought. This is what people did. The lights ahead flickered, dying one by one. Darkness crept closer, swallowing the corridor in chunks. She spotted a maintenance hatch near the floor, its cover hanging loose. Liam, she whispered urgently. Can you crawl? He nodded, tears streaking silently down his face. She lifted the hatch and shoved him inside just as the lion rounded the far corner, skidding slightly on the concrete as it snapped its head toward movement. Claire dove in after him and yanked the hatch closed. The lion slammed into the metal seconds later. The impact rang through the crawlspace, dust raining down as Liam buried his face in her jacket. The lion snarled, clawing at the hatch, metal screaming as it bent inward, but it was too small, too tight. After a moment, the sounds faded, footsteps padded away. Claire didn't breathe until they were gone. She pressed her forehead to Liam's, shaking. You did so well, she whispered. You did exactly right. Above them, the zoo groaned and roared and broke apart. And back in the control room, Bryce Kensington finally understood something his last name had never taught him. Once the gates are open, you can't close them again.